Joining me on the latest episode of the Gray Area Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports and also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. And subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and wherever you get your podcasts for free. I am joined by the
You think about the legacy? Of JJ Barea, like you're just like, how this guy, like how? And so all those things get brought up to your head. You know, you immediately like remember JJ really fondly and think about everything he's brought to this franchise. The fact that he was undrafted, and
Yeah.
he's, still here in the NBA after like so many play. I'm going over all the players in his draft that aren't playing anymore, and it's like 99%. Like, there's not many guys that are still left, and JJ Barea is one of them. You think about that, and then immediately my next thought was, like, all these fans, I don't know if you saw this, but at least it was on Twitter, online, a lot of Mavs fans were really upset when the Mavs signed JJ Barea this year.
That's right.
Why did they give him this roster spot? Why are they wasting this roster spot on this guy? He can't play anymore. He's done. He's washed. All that kind of stuff. And I think Isaac and I on the Lockdown Mavericks podcast kept trying to say, like, put on the brakes. The Mavericks need some vets. They need somebody in the locker room that's older. I mean, they only have two players older than 30 years old right now, Boban and James Johnson. Now that Barea's gone, and it seems like they're going to bring in Courtney Lee for a camp invite, but he's not going to be on the roster. It doesn't seem like. So they only have two guys now. So they need vets now after they get rid of JJ Barea or they let him go. So, but yeah, it's kind of a lifetime achievement. My theory was at the beginning of all this that Cuban was going to give him that guaranteed deal, that $2.6 million veteran minimum. And then he was going to be the highest paid assistant coach because they were going to waive him. He was going to still have that money. And then they were going to, he was going to be an assistant coach. But it looks like he's going to go try to play somewhere else. And that's one of the things, like, a lot of Mavs fans keep saying, why don't they just make him an assistant coach? Well, he still wanted to play, it seems like. And so if he goes and plays somewhere else, that proves it.
It's interesting to see where he lands if he does land somewhere else. But obviously a fan favorite for so many Mavericks fans over the years and what he has done. One of my favorite memories just came this past season when he faked as if he was going to go into the basketball game and faked out the entire crowd before he actually went back and sat down, on the bench. But, a guy who – and I thought his role was going to be more so, as you kind of mentioned, kind of a locker room presence, kind of one of those glue guys in there that provides some veteran leadership for a very young basketball team. But it seems like Mark Cuban just wanted to do good by him. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of folks enjoy Mark Cuban as an owner, because for the most part, he has done the right thing by his players and does so. And this is another example of that. So JJ Barea looks like moving on from the Dallas Mavericks. So as we get into this, obviously it's a much anticipated season for a Mavs team last year that went 43-32, was bounced out of the first round by the Los Angeles Clippers, but at the same time showed a lot of different positive signs going into this season. Thinking back to last season real quick, what was the most positive sign other than obviously Luka Doncic's ascension to becoming an all-NBA player that you took away going into this year?
Yeah, well, I mean, you cut my legs right out from under me. If I can't say Luka Doncic, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the guy was fringe all-star his rookie year, right? Which is amazing to begin with, right? The fact that he's anywhere close to being an all-star type player, that's just absolutely incredible. And then you take it a step further, the next year, he's fourth in MVP voting. There's a couple of injuries. Durant was gone. Curry was gone, things like that. But still, this guy was the one that came out of nowhere almost and rose up the ranks in MVP, and he plays for the Dallas Mavericks. It's just one of those things you just cannot forget every time you think about this team and every time you think about where the Dallas Mavericks are. So since you told me to put that aside, I'll put it aside. I think the play of Kristaps Porzingis was really, really encouraging when he's on the court, and that's kind of the big if with him. When he's on the court, he was awesome. Like there was times when Luka would miss games last year, and Luka dealt with some injuries too. But when Luka was sitting and had some injuries, Porzingis really stepped up and had some big 30-point games and carried them. And, some of those games were losses, but he still put up his numbers and still looked like a guy that fit pretty seamlessly into what the Mavericks were trying to do. And they're starting to add some more of that Dirk stuff into his game and the mid-range shots and the pull-ups. And that stuff is really encouraging because you need those type of shots. And if they had Porzingis, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I think they would have beat that Clippers team if they had Porzingis all those games. I mean, you think about the ejection, think about the injuries, think about, all that stuff. They just had so much go wrong for them in that series. And then Denver beats them in the next series. And I don't think that Denver team was much better than the Mavericks team, right?
Yeah, I mean, Nikola Jokic I think the ascension of Jamal Murray surprised a lot of us, just given how well he played in the playoffs. I still think it would have been a very competitive series, 6-7 game series for both of those teams, and it would have been a toss-up between the Mavs and the Nuggets in that series.
Yeah, it could have been close. Jamal Murray was just absolutely out of his mind in the bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, he just was a different level, and I'll be surprised if we see that level of Jamal Murray again. It's just he shot like 55% from three.
Right.
That just doesn't happen all the time. So, yeah, Kristaps Porzingis is a huge one. I think another big thing was the 3-point shooting of some of the role players. We've been talking about. I mean, I don't know how long you've been covering the team, but at least for the 6 years that I've been covering the team, and for the 4 years that Dorian Finney-Smith has been a Maverick, every year it's like, all right, when's Dorian Finney-Smith's shot going to come around, right? It's like, when is he going to be able to hit the three? When is he going to be able to, hit the outside shot? Tim Hardaway Jr., okay, if he could only come in and be efficient from the three-point line. Okay, Maxi Kleber, when is his three-point shot finally going to come around? And last year, all three of those hit, right?
Yeah.
All three of those guys were about 40% three-point shooters or close to it last year. And that's huge. And if that can continue, this team has no ceiling, I guess, because they can just continue to, space the floor, and their offense is just never going to stop. Because if Luka can drive and get his spots on the floor, and he usually does, whether it's through his strength or even his quickness, and he gets to a spot, kicks out to a shooter, and boom, there's a jumper right there. And if those guys are hitting 40%, I mean, that number one offense in league history last year is going to repeat. And if you do that, then the sky's the limit for you.
Yeah, and you alluded to one of my favorite Mavericks that has really – each year his game has continued to grow, and the consistency of his game has continued to grow, and he's found himself doing the little things. Dorian Finney-Smith, to me, one of the hardest working members on this basketball team, does the dirty work, the rebounding, is getting better with those corner three-point shots that we've seen from him start to develop over his time in his career. He's probably, other than Luka Doncic and Porzingis, probably my favorite Maverick, just because you've seen how hard he has worked at his game and how much patience Carlisle has showed in him to where he has become an essential part, especially on the defensive end with his ability, to defend. And you kind of alluded to it. Obviously, Kristaps Porzingis is a guy who, when he's in the lineup, does some really, as Carlisle put it last year, some historic things, especially shooting the ball from the three-point line and his ability to defend the paint. I don't know about you, but I thought Porzingis showed a lot of maturity in his game because early in the first half of the year, you could tell he was struggling with his offensive game, but he still stayed engaged with his ability to defend the paint and block shots and remain engaged on the defensive end as his game continued to come along offensively. Can he be the second best player on a championship team aside Luka Doncic for this Mavericks team?
Oh, yeah, the answer is yes, straight up. But yeah, I thought that, you talk about him struggling at the beginning of the year and then coming along. I think that he's a real confident guy, and he's been a player that was, drafted by the Knicks 4th, I think, overall. And then he was like the savior of New York Knicks basketball. And when you're the savior of New York Knicks basketball, I don't want to say that smoke just gets blown up. Just gets blown up all the time, but it does, right? And New York media is just looking for this guy to be the savior. And so he's, come up in the league as like, all right, I'm going to be the next guy. I'm the next guy for this team. I'm going to be the number one option. Melo leaves and like, all right, I'm the guy. And then all of a sudden he becomes the second guy. And I thought he fit into that spot really, really well next to Luka. It's kind of nice for so many reasons, but one of the reasons why it's nice that Luka is as good as he is it's so easy for guys to just fit into their spot. I mean, the hierarchy is just so easy. This is not a LeBron Wade thing. This is like a LeBron Bosch thing kind of for Luka and Porzingis. But I think Porzingis can be the second best player on a championship team. He's just got to stay healthy. He can defend the paint. He can, he can step out and hit a three. He hits deep threes too, which have been some of the most fun parts of his game that I didn't really even realize. He's become a pretty decent passer, which is another key to his game. And then hitting those mid-range shots I was talking about earlier. That's just going to be a huge thing for him. And if the Mavericks can add, a couple of rotation pieces, they don't need to do this pie-in-the-sky Giannis. I think they can win a title with Luka and Porzingis as the two main guys. Just shore up some of those rotation spots, try to figure out how they can fix the defense. Maybe Josh Richardson really fixes that this year and helps them and takes him to another level. But yeah, Porzingis for sure. He can be the second best player on a championship team.
Okay, Nick, so you started to allude to some of it. Obviously, we know what's looming large coming in the summer of 2021 if Giannis does not sign his Supermax extension, which a lot of folks think he's going to do because he has many more million reasons why to do so.
Yeah, but he hasn't yet.
He hasn't. Yeah, he hasn't done it yet.
Already.
Yeah, he has, I think, until December 21st to sign it. But at the same time, how real of a shot do the Mavs have in your mind to get Giannis, given the relationship that this organization has had in scouting him in years past and what he could look like in a Mavs uniform, given what Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis project to be?
Yeah, so the whole Giannis thing, it's so interesting. I mean, like the Mavericks have cleared this space. They've done all these different moves. They trade DeLon Wright for an expiring contract in James Johnson, which, clears up some money. They've cleared up all this money. They haven't signed anybody long-term. And it really looks like they're trying to move things all around just to be ready for that 2021 summer. And we've said a lot on Locked On Mavs that it's not just Giannis and Bust. There's a bunch of guys who are going to be available next summer that could be free agents that are going to be interesting for the Mavs. But the Giannis piece of it, if they get Giannis, I mean, that becomes that Miami Big Three, and it might be a little better than that Miami Big Three, like the three guys of Luka, Giannis, Porzingis, because Giannis is just these three guys would fit so incredibly well together. You have, imagine 48 minutes. You stagger Luka and Giannis. 48 minutes, and one of those two guys is always handling the ball. I mean, like that's what, and they can play together, right? You have Giannis that can pick and roll for Luka. Like a pick and roll with Luka and Giannis is just. That's game over for other teams. I mean, you just cannot defend that. I mean, the only way that you defend that is if you sag off of Luka, let him shoot threes and hope that he shoots sub 30%. Because if he's anywhere higher than that on these, pick and roll threes, then it's just over. I mean, right. Giannis is incredibly good in the paint. Luka's also incredibly good in the paint. And you have Porzingis spacing the floor over there, like just standing in the corner, and he can get his own shot. And I think if they got Giannis, Porzingis' role would be kind of interesting. He's really fit well into the second option, but moving to that third has always been hard for guys. It was hard for Kevin Love. It was hard for Bosch. It was hard for, it was kind of hard for Ray Allen, and maybe that was for some other reasons, but it turned out to be hard. To be pretty hard for him, but yeah. Giannis hasn't signed that Supermax yet, though. I mean, we're recording this on December 9th, and he could have signed it already. And if he doesn't sign it before the season, then he can't sign it during the season. So if he doesn't do it before the season starts, then it's going to be a whole year of us saying, all right, well, he didn't sign it. He can sign it after the season ends, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it could happen, and it's a pie in the sky dream thing. There's been a couple people online. I think I saw Dalton Trigg was the first one to say this, but JJ Barea should go and sign a vet minimum deal in Milwaukee, so he could be the plant that goes in there. Just another guy to be in Giannis's ear, like, hey, guess what? I'm going to be coaching in Dallas next year. You think I'm great? Luka Doncic is just as great, even more.
I like it. It's funny. There's one name, and folks are going to kill me when they listen to this and hear this, but if he was a healthier version of himself, Blake Griffin, I think, would be a fantastic fit here with all of his entire skill set. Now, I know he's a little older. He's going to be, I think, 32 next year. But at the same time, if he was the Blake Griffin of 4 or 5 years ago, or when he was with the Clippers, I don't know. I think Blake Griffin would be a fantastic fit here because he can shoot, he can rebound, he can do a lot of things in transition too. I don't know if that's a name that
Yeah, even 2 years ago, right? He was third team All NBA in like 2018, I think. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. When he's another guy, when he's healthy, he's really, really good. He's an incredible passer. Like, that's been a part of his game that I don't think a lot of people expected when he first came out of Oklahoma. The 3-point shot, he's kind of added to his game. Defensively, I think you'd really struggle with Porzingis and Blake as your two big men. I think you could figure out some way, but your two wing defenders would have to be really, really elite in order to to make up for that. But yeah, Blake Griffin, the only problem with Blake Griffin besides the injuries, which is a whole thing of itself, but that contract, man, that contract is so big, and he's coming up on man, let's see, he has 36.5 million this year, 39 million player option next year, and he's picking that up. So so like if they strike out on everybody, maybe they can clear up enough space to just like bring him in to the space. But that'd be a really sad consolation prize. I feel like we're like, let's get Giannis, and then we like, guess what, guys? He got Blake Griffin.
Yeah, Blake Griffin.
That'd be like that meme where they're like, oh, let's get Giannis, and then your parents say, we have Giannis at home, and it's Blake Griffin. It's Blake Griffin's face.
Well, that's
fit pretty well, though.
Yeah, no, I think he would too. But again, the contract, the injuries, and he's not Lob City Blake Griffin. So there's some of that. So let's talk about the depth of this roster. It's some moves that were made. You talked about James Johnson a little bit being brought in. Second degree black belt and all that. All that jazz there. And then
he also plays basketball.
Yeah, exactly. He's an enforcer who happens to play basketball also. Josh Richardson. This one is the one that intrigued me most because obviously losing Seth Curry and his ability to shoot from the 3-point line, he was fantastic in that role. But I think, and I don't know if you agree with this, I think they actually got better with Josh Richardson because of his defensive prowess. But we saw what happened with Tim Hardaway. You get around Luka, he's going to find you and get you open. You're going to make a lot of catch and shoot threes. I think Josh Richardson has a chance to really improve his 3-point shooting just because he's going to be playing with the guys going to get him the ball when he's wide open all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And Josh Richardson, he struggled from 3 last year in Philadelphia, but I think everyone struggled from 3 in Philadelphia.
Right.
There's just some issues on that roster, and Ben Simmons he's a good playmaker, but he's not the playmaker that Luka is, I don't think. And so 2 years prior in Miami, the 2 years he was in Miami before Philadelphia, he shot 38% and catch and shoot threes, which is, that's solid. That's what you want from a guy like that. And so I think he's going to fit in so well. I think that the Mavs are going to miss Seth's elite shooting, just the fact that he was always solid. He could come off those screens. I just don't think the Mavericks have a guy like that, besides maybe Tim Hardaway, guy that you can really come off screens and do some kind of stuff like that, like JJ Redick does, like even Steph Curry does. But they're going to miss that. But I think the defensive upgrade is going to be massive. I always get brought back to when every time the Mavericks are brought up in one of these draft profiles about who they were going to get, and especially Kevin O'Connor on the Ringer would always write up in every single one of his write-ups. He'd say the Mavericks should get, Sadiq Bey or Josh Green or any one of these wings, these defensive wings, because at times during the playoffs, Seth Curry was guarding Kawhi Leonard, and you never want that to happen. And it's true, right? Like
that's very true.
You never want that to happen. And the Mavericks obviously didn't want that to happen. And so this summer, you saw what they did. They trade for Josh Richardson. They, get James Johnson in a trade as well. They also bring in, Josh Green. They bring in Wes Iwundu, who's another guy that can do that. And then, Tyler Bey as well in the draft. I mean, they bring in all these wings. They're like, all right, we will never have a situation again where our 6'3" guard is trying to guard, freaking Kawhi Leonard, like 6'8", MVP type guy in Kawhi Leonard. So I think these roster upgrades some of them are going to be a little subtle, right? Like James Johnson's not a guy that's such an upgrade from, DeLon Wright that you're going to be like, oh man, went from a, fringe starter to like an all-star type guy. It's not that, but they made enough upgrades around the perimeter and around, the edges that I think it'll make a difference.
Yeah, it should, because as you mentioned, there is never a good situation where you're seeing a guy who Seth Curry is a proficient offensive player. Yeah, not in situations where you need him guarding guys like Kawhi and others. You saw how much of an emphasis and focus Rick Carlisle and this team put on the defensive end of the basketball. And I wonder this because you mentioned earlier, this team was the best in terms of offensive efficiency in NBA history. This is a team that's obviously focusing more on the defensive end after finishing 18th in defensive efficiency last year. Do you fear a little bit of an overcorrection when it comes to that, and some of where the offense was historically good last year, not the best defensively? Could there be an overcorrection where you see some of that offense be reduced because of the more focused defensive effort that they're going to be putting into?
The only kind of overcorrection that could actually happen, I think, is that the Josh Richardson from Seth Curry trade takes away so much shooting, and maybe some of these guys regress, like Tim Hardaway regresses, Dorian, Maxey. Maybe there's some guys regress in their shooting, that all of a sudden we look at this team, a month from now and say, man, they just don't have enough shooting to do this. But even so, Luka is enough of an offensive engine. The only way the Mavs will regress offensively is physically, is if Luka regresses. If Luka's not as good as he was last year, because he just is an offensive engine unto himself. He's an automatic, if you put him on any team in the league and they'd be top 10 in offensive efficiency, I think, because of how much he handles the ball, the way that he can score, the efficiency at which he scores. Luka is 6'8", and the guy was one of the most efficient scorers in the paint in the entire NBA, because he gets these guards on him that have to guard him, because you can't throw out some of these slower wings, or even, you can't throw a big on him at all, because they'll just cook him, on the outside. But they put these guards on him. He drives in the paint. He scores over the top of them. And it's just so easy for him to do that. And he's so efficient in that area. And so that really, really drives the Mavericks offense. He's an incredible passer and playmaker. So he's going to hit guys for lobs. He's going to hit guys for threes. They just have to knock them down. And they did last year. And so I just can't see a situation where they'd regret. They're probably not going to be the best offense in NBA history again, unless they beat their own record from last year, which I guess could happen.
It could happen. You're right.
But the overcorrection defensively, I don't think that could happen unless Luka tries to be all defense, puts all of his effort. He got a vote last year. Did you know Luka got a vote for all defensive team last year?
No, did not know that, actually.
Yeah, there's this some, we make fun of him all the time on Locked On Mavs, but there's some New York writer that gave him a vote for all defensive teams.
Wow. No, I had no idea.
Unless Luka is like really gunning for all defensive team, puts all his effort on the defensive end and has no gas left for the offensive end, and that's the only way I could see that they fall out of top 5, top 10 next year. Because I don't think anybody improved so much that we're saying, oh man, that's the team that is going to overtake them. I mean, the Rockets are taking a step back. I think the Clippers are taking an offensive step back this year. Those are the teams that were up there with them. The Nuggets, I guess, could take another step forward, but I can't imagine how much more.
And you kind of started to allude to it, because that's kind of where I wanted to go next with respect to how this roster is currently constructed and where they fit in terms of that potential upper echelon in the Western Conference. Obviously, the Lakers are there sitting there as the defending champions. We've seen the Clippers be weakened with departures such as Montrezl Harrell and others, and the chemistry issues that apparently they had all of last year. And then, of course, the Jazz and the Nuggets and other teams that are right there. Where do you think the Mavericks fit in terms of that upper echelon? Can they crack the top 4 of the Western Conference this season?
Yeah, if you start looking at them as far as tiers, I think the Lakers and the Clippers are probably in their own tier up there. I think that the next tier is, pretty big one. You have like the teams like the Mavericks, the Nuggets, the Rockets are out of that tier now. They were on that tier, but now I just think they're completely out of it. You have the Jazz probably in that tier. I think Portland, if they're healthy, they're going to jump back up into that tier. So that's 4 teams right there. The Warriors, I don't think are going to be up there. The Suns, a lot of people are really high on the Suns, but I think it's going to take them another year or so, and we'll see what happens with Chris Paul and where he is. But yeah, I think it's that next 4 teams. So you have Denver, the Jazz, the Mavericks, and the Trailblazers. So yeah, I think it's going to be a toss-up who's like the 3rd or 4th best team in the West, right? Whoever gets home court advantage, because those teams I think are all going to be really, really close in the standings.
Yeah, it's interesting because how tight the West was last year. the Mavericks actually could have really found themselves, especially if they had been a little bit better in clutch time situations. They could have found themselves. They were a 7 seed last year. They could have been as high as a 2 seed if they had played, even if they had been even in terms of those clutch time, situations. Which gets me to, Rick Carlisle. Of course, he has been through championship years. He has been through a lot with this team. Do you feel like Rick Carlisle is still the right head coach for this team, given how they have continued to grow and progress and what he has been through with this franchise, and now where he's on the cusp again of having a true championship contender potentially?
Interesting. So your question insinuates that you think he might not be the best coach for this team.
No, I like Rick Carlisle a lot as a head coach, and I'm interested because Luka Doncic is in a very interesting spot. He's made his ascension to the top 5 as a player in this league, and sometimes when a coach, say a David Blatt, for example, gets around a superstar like LeBron James, there's a certain ceiling that's reached. And Rick Carlisle, yes, has been as a championship coach. I just wonder at times, is his ceiling where it needs to be to where we think Luka Doncic's ceiling is in terms of a potential championship player, and if he's going to be the right coach to get him there, given what we know about Carlisle and sometimes how he's been in the past with other players. But I think he's evolved enough to where I feel a little more confident about that these days.
Yeah, interesting. So I think that Carlisle has won a championship. I know that he has won a championship, but you look at some of these guys that you needed an upgrade from. You allude to some of these guys like the David Blatts or the, it would be like Mark Jackson in Golden State, right? Or even, think about The Last Dance. You think about Doug Collins, right? With the Bulls. I don't think any of those, maybe Doug Collins had, but I don't think any of those coaches that won championships or led a team to a championship before, and they had to bring in these other coaches, and they just happened to be just the perfect coach at the right time to be able to lead the team. We know Rick Carlisle can lead a team to a championship. It's already happened. I mean, it's already been proven. And this team already went from, a lottery team to a playoff team in one season. So I have no reason to think that Rick Carlisle can't, lead this team to the next level. They've already taken a step up. If the Mavericks last year were like a 30-win team again, and we were saying, man, like Luka is so good. He had the same stats. He was just as good, but for some reason this team's just not good. There's something that's not clicking. We can tell that Luka's really good, but something's holding them back. Maybe it's the coach, but I think they kind of maybe maxed out their talent last year as far as, how good they were. Luka gets better over the summer. He gets better over another year. Porzingis gets better over another year, and then hopefully they'll take another step forward this year. But there's nothing in my mind that thinks that Carlisle shouldn't be the coach of, this team, except for he's pretty prickly with the media. And I'd love to have, I see sometimes, I don't know if you see these, but sometimes like Steve Kerr will sit down with a media member and go over like in-depth things about the team, and he'll be really nice and with his time and all this. And I'm like, man, it'd be nice. Right? Like, wouldn't it be real nice if a coach like sat down with her? Like, who did I see recently? Was it Alvin Gentry? I think Alvin Gentry, when he got fired from the Pelicans, he had a dinner with like all the media members that came, like there were at every single game. And you're like, there's no way Rick Carlisle would ever do anything anything like that. And so, yeah, that's the only reason why selfishly I'd be like, yeah, they should get another coach. But other than that, I mean, the basketball-wise, you just can't take anything away from him. The way that he's designed this team and this offense, it's just he fit everything around Luka. It's not like he's trying to put, square pegs in round holes or reverse that. I don't know whichever way it's supposed to go. But, I mean, he's put all the pieces in the right spot, I think. The Mavericks just seem to have a lack of, kind of talent last year to get to that next level. And so hopefully all the development and some of the new additions can take them there.
Yeah, and when I say that, it's more so about looking and projecting toward the future as far as the ceiling is concerned, and if he is going to be able to help reach that ceiling, even though he was able to do so with a much more veteran-laden group that he had back in 2011. I think I've seen enough evolution. A little bit more patience with his young guys. You could tell that he's evolving as a head coach to where, he doesn't have quite the reputation that he used to, being so hard on his point guards and those kinds of things. Yes, so, right. I'm interested to see how it goes.
And you look at the difference between the team Luka's first year and Luka's second year, right? Like, remember the first year, Luka was kind of playing off the ball a lot. Dennis had the ball in his hands. Harrison Barnes had the ball in his hands a lot. And maybe it was the front office that said, we need to get the ball in this guy's hand. Let's just get rid of all the guys that handle the ball. Trade Dennis Let's trade Harrison Barnes. Let's
Yeah.
trade all these guys.
Let's try the kid out and see what he's got.
Yeah, right. And force the ball into Luka's hands. But I think it was probably collaborative, right? And that's one of the good things that, comes with having a coach and a front office and owner that have been together for so long, is they can all work together like that. Nobody's fighting for their job in a sense, right? They're all kind of guaranteed those checks. And so they're not trying to outdo the other one, or, it's not like a, it's not like a situation that you had with the Texans, right? Where, what was it? Who's it? Bill O'Brien is like trading away Andre Johnson. You're like, wait, what are we doing right now?
Right.
Coach is, kicking his own legs out from under him. But yeah, it's not a situation like that. I think it's worked pretty well. And we'll see if they can take a next step, like a huge step forward this year, it'd be really encouraging. And then if they get Giannis, I mean, just the sky's the limit. I mean, that'd be incredible.
So as we get ready to get you out of here, obviously it's a very, very anticipated season for this team. Dwight Powell's coming back off of an Achilles injury. Jalen Brunson's coming back, from a shoulder injury. Kristaps Porzingis still working back from his meniscus tear. So there's a lot of things that are happening from the injury front where this team is getting healthy. As you open up your crystal ball into the 2020-2021 NBA season, what does Nick see for this Mavs team, given the success that they had last year and what we think is going to be another step forward for this team going into this year?
Yeah, I tend to go optimistic in my predictions and things like that, especially with the Mavericks. And I think that this team is top 4 team in the West. I think that they take this next step forward. They're like a 50-win team in a regular amount of game season. So that's I think that this year that's like 43 or 44 or something like that. If they win that amount of games, that would equal a 50-win season in an 82-game season. And so I think that they take this next step forward. They win around in the playoffs, whoever they're going to play, because they're going to play one of those bottom teams, the 8, 7, 8, 6 teams in the Western Conference. So they play one of those teams. They beat them in the first round. I think that Luka is top 5 in MVP again. If they're better than that, like say they're third or even second in the West, one of these LA teams takes a step back. I think Luka could win MVP easily. He's the favorite right now, according to Bet Online. He's the pretty much the overwhelming favorite. Giannis is the next one. I don't think Giannis is winning his third MVP. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
It all really depends on Porzingis' injuries as far as how far this team can go in the playoffs, and I think regular season wins wise. So if he stays healthy, which I hope he does, it seems like all the trainers and doctors have said that he can stay healthy. These have been contact injuries that he's gone through. These have not been non-contact where we're worried about the, how his leg's going to hold up. So if he stays healthy, this team can win a round. They could go to I think they could easily go to the conference finals, right? We saw Denver last year go to the conference finals. We saw Portland the year before that. And Portland, that team 2 years ago that went to the conference finals. I mean, Mavericks were better than them last year, right? Like that team just hit all the right, points during the playoffs and were able to get there. So that's what I think about this team.
Yeah, I see that could be a ceiling for this team this year because Luka Doncic, the leap that he took from year 1 to year 2, a lot of folks keep telling me, like, yeah, we expected. I didn't see that leap coming, going from obviously a rookie of the year to a legitimate MVP candidate throughout all of last season. I think was a leap that I think took a lot of folks by surprise. But given that now, I think that's why the Mavericks look at this team and says, hey, we've got a championship window here that's been burst open because of this kid and what we think could be around them. So it should be an exciting season for this team going forward. Nick, tell the folks where they can find you in terms of your work and what you do and where they can get a hold of you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me at Nick Van Exit on Twitter, like we said. You can follow the Locked On Mavericks podcast at Locked On Mavs. You can follow us on, Apple, Spotify, all that kind of stuff, and follow Locked On Mavs. I also run the Locked On social accounts. So if you follow, other sports, if you're into, MLB or NHL, NFL, any of that kind of stuff, we have Locked On, all those kind of things. So go follow those. Follow Locked On NBA pods everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that. So running that, Locked On's got some good things in the works. And so, yeah, follow me there.
It's going to be a fun season for Nick and his folks. Just talked to Isaac the other day. He was fantastic on here also. And him and Nick do a terrific job with their Locked On Mavs podcast. Very entertaining show. If you are a Mavs fan, it's definitely a must listen to with Nick and Isaac. So Nick, I appreciate the time. You can find Nick on Twitter at Nick Van X. Hopefully, Nick Van X will unblock him one day, so he can
one day
get his relationship with him together. Nick Angstadt of Lock on Mavs, good enough to join me on the podcast. Nick, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it, man, and go Mavs.
Heck yeah, go Mavs.
Appreciate it.